Welcome. I'm Allyson Carter, and I'm so excited to start our first episode of our podcast. We have a special guest, Elizabeth Sabol, and she comes from a law firm in estate planning and probate, but her experience is vast. It started in accounting, working even in DC. She did public accounting and corporate accounting. Her corporate accounting even includes international experience. And then in 2014, she decided that law school was what was best for her and worked for a boutique firm here in Austin and specialized in estate planning and probate. And during the pandemic, she was so brave and opened her own firm. But she has pushed through and is helping families here in Williamson County, and we can't wait to learn more about what she has to say. Thank you for coming and being here, Elizabeth.
I am so excited to be here. This is an area of law that I feel so passionately about. I am so excited to talk to you and all of your followers today.
Thank you. Well, first, a lot of people, they aren't really prepared for estate planning and creating wills, and so we want to talk about what happens when somebody hasn't prepared, hasn't created a will when they passed? What should the family expect?
Sure. So I tell pretty much anyone who will listen how important it is to have a will. And the reason I say that is because not having a will when you pass away, not having a comprehensive estate plan, puts such a burden on your family. And I think it's helpful to step back and think about what that actually looks like for your family. Because it's true, anyone can pass away without a will. You're gonna die either way. I hate to break it to you.
Yeah.
But people think, okay, well, I don't have a huge estate. I maybe have a house, some investments, I have maybe my 401k. All of that, it's not tons of money. I don't have a grand estate. Why is estate planning necessary? Well, one, I would say that the law makes a lot of assumptions about how you would want your property to pass, and that's not always true. If you are in a blended family, it is absolutely crucial. So, for example, if you are in a second marriage and you've bought a house together, but you have kids from your first marriage, you pass away, now your kids are part owner with wife number two. That maybe not make a whole lot of sense.
Difficult to navigate.
It's difficult to navigate. And what maybe was a good relationship while you were still alive, now that that connection is no longer there, sometimes things get really heated. And that's a very difficult situation. You never want to have to fight these things out in court. So the default rules don't always make sense for everybody. That's doubly true if you have minor children. People may know that minor kids can't actually own property. And so if they inherit from their parent, they will often require extra procedures to either open up a guardianship for that kid or have some court-supervised distribution of those assets. So having minor kids as the default inheritors of the estate gets really complicated really quickly.
So tell me, what does that mean? If I left property to my son who's a minor and I didn't leave an executor of the estate, who takes care of that? Does the court assign somebody? Does the state take care of it until he can? Or what happens? Can you explain that?
So there are no straightforward answers. So it depends entirely on what your assets of the estate look like. Is it real property? Is it a bank account? How much is in that bank account?
Wow.
It also depends on what the situation is with the child's other parent. If that person is also inheriting, that can kind of shape how the court will make those decisions. So there are no really straightforward answers, but at the most extreme, it would involve going to court, getting a guardianship opened for your minor kid, have that be in place until he turns 18 and can inherit that property in his own name. But that means you have to go to court every single year and give the judge updates on what's been going on with these assets.
Who pays for this?
It comes out of the kid's pocket. It's always going to be from the assets of the estate or what eventually would go to your family. And that's really, really expensive, and all of that can be avoided with an estate plan. So if there are any minor kids, and I'm talking whether they're your minor children or if you want to leave assets to grandchildren or something like that, you want to provide for their college fund. That those default rules don't leave assets to grandchildren if your kids are still alive. So if you want to provide for kids, there's no great mechanism to do that without an estate plan. Mm-hmm. But it also means that those assets have to be under supervision of the court, and that's just a really tremendously burdensome process for the family.
That is a lot to think about, not creating a will, especially for your children and the people you're leaving behind, and the cost.
Absolutely. And I think people get scared off by, I have to meet with a lawyer. How much is that going to cost? I would tell people it's not nearly as intimidating as you might think it is. Estate planning attorneys deal with clients all the time, and we come across so many different kinds of family situations. There's almost nothing that clients can say that will shock us or make us think that you are uncaring towards your family or anything like that. We understand that there's a whole history that we are not privy to. My approach as an estate planner is always to meet the clients where they're at and honor their wishes to the extent that the law allows.
So when a family is thinking about creating a will, what kind of questions should they and what kind of documents should they be getting together? What kind of information? How should they prepare?
Sure. So whenever you are ready to make a will, it's important to, one, think very carefully about who your family is and what issues that they might be dealing with. We were just talking about minor children. The same is true if you have a disabled or incapacitated family member that you want to provide for. A lot of times families think, okay, I have a special needs child. I am primarily providing for them in my estate plan. I'll just leave them the money. But doing that can really jeopardize a lot of their government benefits, and the financial value of those government benefits over a lifetime are way more than what they might receive from your estate. And so when you have that kind of situation, estate planners are very careful to leave money to that special needs child in a way that does not jeopardize them from Medicaid, Social Security disability, all of the whole range of benefits that are available to them and rightly theirs. It's important to think about who your beneficiaries are. So if you have minor kids, special needs. Also, if you are concerned about that beneficiary's ability to handle an inheritance. Families that are struggling with addiction issues might really recognize that leaving somebody potentially a large inheritance to somebody who, frankly, will maybe
relapse and then take all that money and just spend it in one time. Or just
spend it. There are ways that you can put wrappers around that inheritance that protects those assets, but also protects that beneficiary from his worst impulses. And so having an estate plan that reflects who these people are and what challenges they're dealing with is really, really important. It's also a good idea to think about, what all do I have in my estate anyway? So most people have, a house, some financial accounts, but also maybe they inherited some mineral rights from their grandparents out in West Texas. It's important to make a plan for those as well. Yeah. That's going to really shape what the attorney is going to recommend. So having a pretty clear idea of what those assets look like is really, really important.
So making sure you keep a list of all your assets so the attorney knows what they need to take care of is ideal.
And that's also tremendously helpful whenever you go to use that will. I always send my clients home with what's called what I call a family inventory. And it just asks you to name, where are all my bank accounts? What credit cards do I have open? Yeah. What recurring bills do I have? Having all of that gathered in a central location is so helpful for the family after somebody's passed. But on the front end, it also means that your estate planner is going to be able to give you the most comprehensive recommendations that really encompass everything that you have going on in your financial lives.
So in a new age, in a digital era that we're living in, tell me about digital estate planning. What does that encompass, and what are we facing with those kind of challenges?
Well, so at the outset, I will say that there are almost no jurisdictions that I'm aware of in the United States. I heard rumors that Florida maybe is enacting something, but there's no such thing today in Texas as a digital will. We are married to pen and paper. So any kind of estate plan is going to require a paper document. And so if you see something online that says, I can just make a digital will, don't believe it.
What about like our assets that are out there that are digital assets, like our Bitcoin and our Facebook and Instagram? And when we pass away, what happens to all of that thing? So, how does our family take care of those things?
Well, that is a great question, and something that people are really struggling with right now. There was a news story last year. Somebody died with tens of millions of dollars in his Bitcoin wallet. The family didn't have the key, and so I think last I heard they were still trying to get access to that Bitcoin wallet. So if you have something like that, it's really important to leave some breadcrumbs for your family so they can unlock those assets. I mean, can you imagine somebody dying with that level of wealth?
No, it makes me want to go right down and make sure my family has all that information so they can get those assets, because so many people have those types of things, but they're all digital. And how do they know otherwise if you don't provide that for them and, provide that information for an attorney, a state attorney, so that they can make sure that they have it?
Yeah, absolutely. But, more broadly, an estate plan will give your executor access to all those accounts, ideally. Now, some providers have different service agreements with their users. I think Facebook is one of them. Gmail is another. Almost everyone has one of those, if not both. They allow you to go in and designate kind of a custodian of that account if you ever pass away. And so I've seen it, unfortunately, in my personal life. After somebody's passed away, that page kind of gets converted to like a memorial account, and so people can't continue to post there. It's obvious that this person has passed. But I have at this point 15 years of things uploaded to Facebook. I mean, I was an early adopter. I got that back in college, right?
Yes.
And so I would be really upset if all of those memories just kind of vanished. I'm sure a lot of my friends and family would feel the same way. And so taking an inventory of all of those accounts, seeing if there is someone you can designate on their website to take over for you. But in the absence of that, having a will that says my executor not only can deal with my bank account and my property and my car and what have you, but a well-drafted will also say my executor can also have access to my digital assets.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent thing because so many of us take pictures and upload them to Facebook, and so of our children and just special memories, and to lose that and the family to lose that is kind of difficult, especially if you lose a loving family member, and so you want to be able to have access to those memories. And so many of us do have Facebook and have posted and saved those memories on there. So I'm sure a lot of you who are watching this and looking at this will want to go back. I know I'm going to later tonight and make sure I have somebody designated on that account.
I mean, I can't remember the last time I printed up a physical piece of photo paper and had that printed out. Yes. You don't take those to the 1 hour photo anymore. You just upload them to your account.
Not very often, no.
Not very often, right? And so, same thing. I would be devastated if I lost access to a lot of those accounts because, like pictures from my wedding or family reunions, all are stored on the cloud now.
Yes.
And it would be awful if those were gone.
So another important thing I want to address is there are options out there to do like LegalZoom and things like that. So what is the difference between doing a quick will on there and going through and hiring an attorney? What are the benefits of going through an attorney instead of doing a quick online will like that?
Sure. So I think this is a question that estate planners get a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake to reduce everything we do to the words on the page. I mean, that's ultimately what it boils down to, is your end product is a...
Fill in the blank.
It is not a fill in the blank. That is not what we do, and that's a big misconception, right? But, you go home from your attorney's office having signed a fresh stack of papers. You think, well, I mean, it's just words on a page. Anyone can do that. But your attorney selects those words very, very carefully, or the good ones do anyway. And that comes after a conversation with you where we talk about, what's going on with your kids? How are they doing? Are they stable? Are they in a stable relationship or not? Or are they in a stable career or not? What's going on with them? What's going on with your children? Do you have any causes that you feel...
Just a more personal touch.
It's a more personal touch. And I will say that I have not come across a LegalZoom or one of the competitors that didn't have some kind of problem. Either the person made bad choices at the outset, like for example, in Texas, somebody who's been convicted of a felony cannot be appointed by the court as the estate executor.
That I did not know. And that is a really important fact that I think a lot of people probably do not know.
Right. And you think, okay, well, my kid got into trouble in his 20s. He, paid his debt to society. It's been decades. At this point, he's really turned his life around. Well, the court isn't going to consider that. They're just going to say, you have this felony conviction. You are, therefore, ineligible to be appointed as executor. Well, if you're filling out a LegalZoom and you think, well, hey, he's turned his life around. He's a perfectly fine executor.
You have no idea.
You have no idea. But an estate planner is going to ask those questions.
Of course.
But also, a lot of those fill-in-the-blank wills are not drafted for the local law. They are kind of just saying, well, a will is a will is a will, and doesn't necessarily reflect the Texas laws that are going to be applied. Or in my home state of Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania laws are going to be applied. So I tell people, if you ever move, you consult with a local lawyer and just don't assume that any will is fine.
Yeah.
Whenever you go to those online providers, you can't necessarily assume that you're not just getting any will that they give to anyone who logs in anywhere in the country.
So you bring up a great point about moving and using that same will in one place, that it's going to be the will you need in another place. So how often should you redraft a will? Like, how often should you update your will in your life?
Well, there are certain inflection points where it's absolutely vital. Moving across state lines. In Texas, we have this concept of independent administration of an estate. Mm-hmm. You have to ask for that in the will, or you have to get all of your beneficiaries to sign off on it, which can be problematic at times. So it's better to just put that in the will and be done with it. But that concept doesn't necessarily exist in other states. They will approach their probate process in their unique ways. So if you ever move state lines, definitely you needed to get a new will. Also, when your family changes, we talked at the top about getting remarried. If you have a new spouse, that dramatically changes how property gets divided up. It's really important to update it at marriages, at births of your kids. If you want to make provisions for grandchildren, when grandchildren come along, that can be important too. But also, over time, it's worth revisiting. I tell my clients, it's easy to predict where you're going to be in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, not always, right? Life is long and full of surprises. But
yes, it is.
You have an idea of what the next 5 years of your life are going to look like. Beyond that, who knows?
Right.
It's really hard to say. So at a minimum, I tell people, look at this will every 5 years and see if it still makes sense for you. That also depends on changes in wealth, right? So somebody like Elon Musk has a very, very different estate plan than me with my suburban Austin house and like a couple of bank accounts, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to look very, very different. So as changes in wealth occur, it's a good idea to revisit that estate plan. Also, as a CPA, I can't help but mention taxes, but tax laws change all the time. I have not been doing it that long, but there's been dramatic shifts in the tax laws around
Every administration.
Every Congress usually monkeys with it in some form of fashion. So as tax laws change, it's a good idea to look at your estate plan again.
You told me a great story once about Kobe Bryant, and he didn't make a update to his will, and he had another child. So can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Well, okay, so I think Kobe might have been a bit of a dog in his early 20s. And
yes.
There maybe were some kids floating out there that he didn't necessarily want to include as one of his children with his wife, Vanessa. So his will was crafted that said, here are my 3 children. I am making provisions for them. And these are my only 3 children. Well, he and Vanessa had baby number 4, and he died before he was able to update his will. So the family had to go to court and say, well, I know that this is what the document says, but here's what he actually meant. And that's a really stressful situation to be in. One, you have to, do all these extra court procedures on top of the regular court procedures.
Of course.
And that can get expensive, and it's stressful.
Yeah, I mean, you've just lost somebody very important to you, and of course they're in a position right in the media and so much surrounding it, and then she has to go to court to try to include their other child. That's a lot, and that could have easily been prevented by just making that small change to their will, as soon as their baby was born.
Absolutely.
So,
but
important lesson.
And I think it also just goes to show you, an estate plan is important, and the estate plan is going to forestall a lot of problems. It's way better that Kobe died with a slightly outdated estate plan than none at all.
Of course, yes. Who knows what it would have happened if he didn't have anything?
Who knows, right?
People coming out of the woodwork.
Absolutely. And so I think that just goes to show you an estate plan is only as good as it's maintained. So if you stick it in a drawer and forget about it for a couple decades.
That's why we need excellent attorneys like you, Elizabeth, to make sure we're prepared.
I'm here to scare you.
So I want to touch on a few other things before we finish. We want to talk about other important documents that, as your parents are aging, or, maybe you have surgeries, or things that you have kids and you just want people to be prepared and know your wishes. What other kind of documents, when you're doing estate planning or just planning in general for your life, should you sign or have?
So I tell my clients that a comprehensive estate plan is really designed to ensure the smooth transition of your property and the well-being in the case of serious illness. So if you think about it, I encountered this with my own family. If you have a long period of decline before your death, it's going to become necessary for somebody to step in and manage the financial affairs for you. My grandmother passed away after 10 years of an Alzheimer's diagnosis, and thank goodness that she had a well-designed estate plan that was signed before she became truly incapacitated. But for years, my mom stepped in as her power of attorney and was able to consent to her medical care.
And so many people are facing that, with their parents, Alzheimer's, dementia, and don't have that preparation or don't know that they should have it before it's already setting in. So that is a really, knowing when they should do that, a important component of the estate planning.
Absolutely.
So what exactly is a power of attorney, and what does it do for the family?
So there are 2 flavors of a power of attorney.
Okay.
The first is a medical power of attorney, and that's exactly what it sounds like. So in Texas, what that document will do is it appoints somebody to make medical decisions on your behalf in the event that you are unable to do so. By definition, by statute, it only kicks in if you are unable to express your wishes. So think, dementia cases. Think, you're in a coma, you are on a ventilator, or for whatever reason. I'm not a physician, but the
Probably it was really important when we went through all of this COVID, and people probably became a lot more aware because they were having to be on a ventilator, and families were having to make decisions because they couldn't make the decisions when they were, in this state. So being aware of things that can happen suddenly, illnesses that can affect us, even though it's not later in life,
well,
knowing that having somebody to take care of you and make those decisions for you, and telling them what you want in that capacity.
Absolutely. And, I will say for people in my age group, I am in my late 30s, it is far more likely that I'm going to be seriously incapacitated and require somebody else to step in and make those decisions for me than it would be. Then it's much less likely that I'm gonna die. So if you have to look at like the range of risks for somebody, planning for incapacity as well becomes really important. I was talking about the medical power of attorney, and you talked about having asking your family to step in and make medical decisions for you. One of the other documents I ask my clients to sign is what's called an advance directive. And that doesn't appoint anyone to directly make medical decisions. That's the medical power of attorney. But what that advance directive will do is it tells your family, here's the roadmap of how I would make those decisions. And you can customize it if you have certain medical things that you're aware of. But for the most part, I tell people, think about, what would happen if I'm expected to die? Do I want to be kept on a feeding tube and just be kept alive in a vegetative state for however long it takes until my body gives out? Or do I just want to be kept comfortable and allow that terminal illness to run its course without further intervention? A lot of people feel really strongly about that, and there's no correct answer. It's really going to depend on, some religious practices are going to affect that. Your cultural background are going to affect that. So there's no clear-cut way, but people do feel strongly. People have thoughts about that. And I think it's important to allow yourself the power to make those decisions for you. And the way you communicate that and the way you document that is through that estate plan, including an advance directive. Backing up a little bit, we talked about power of attorney. We've been talking about medical decisions, but by the same token, it's important to appoint somebody who can deal with your financial life as well. You want to have somebody who has access to your accounts to, pay your credit card bills or the mortgage or make sure the lights stay on. So you want to make sure there's somebody who you trust who has this power to access your accounts. People get nervous and they think, you're giving that person a lot of power.
Yes.
And it's true. But you can shape those documents so they only become effective if you are incapacitated. You can limit the amount of things that they can do with your property. You can restrict it to, you only have access to my bank accounts, but you can't access like my trading portfolio or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways that you can customize that. But again, I would only recommend doing that with an attorney. The nature of all of these documents that we're talking about, your will, these powers of attorney, these advance directives, unfortunately, you really only have one shot at them. By the time you go to use these documents, it's probably too late to fix them.
These are so important, and a lot of people have trouble having these conversations with their family, but they're so important to start early and continue throughout your life at different stages. And we appreciate so much. Can you tell me more about your firm and how to contact you so that everybody watching can contact you and make a plan? I know I'm going to.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes. So my firm is exclusively focused on estate planning and probate. Like I said at the outset, this is something that I feel very passionately about, and I really enjoy working with families and giving them the peace of mind that their affairs are going to be settled for their family on the estate planning side, and helping that family go through what is a really difficult time. Courts and the legal process can be really overwhelming. and then asking somebody who's grieving, who's just lost a family member, who is dealing with brand new financial realities of like maybe the breadwinner spouse has passed. And so there's a lot of pressure on the family at that point. And I find it really professionally rewarding to work with families at that juncture. So my focus is limited to these areas of law, and my general philosophy is to center the client in pretty much everything I do. So if I'm dealing with clients who have mobility issues, I am always happy to come to them. I don't make them tote over to my office in Cedar Park. But, yes, so my approach is really just to be as accommodating as I can be to whatever the family has going on. My firm is Sabol Law, and you can find me at my website, which is esabollaw.com. That's esabollaw.com. You can always email me. My email is info@esabollaw.com. And I would be thrilled to talk to whoever has any questions. I do offer consultations, so if you are just kind of in the early stages and you want to gather some questions and just run a few questions past an attorney, I do offer consultations online or Zoom or over the phone, and I would love to talk to whoever has questions about this process.
Well, I have to offer one more tidbit of information that's so amazing about Elizabeth, is that we always worry about when working with an attorney paying by the hour and trying to rush through and get all that information there. And she also offers a special service. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So my estate plans, I always do flat rate. And I base that rate based on past experience. I have an idea of how long things will take. But I do flat rate because I think it works best when people can ask questions. If they don't understand something, I don't want to just send them on their way without having the opportunity to explain it to them. But people are also like, well, I don't want to pay $200 an hour for the privilege of you explaining something to me. So I really, really prefer structuring all of my estate planning engagements on a flat rate. I think that provides the most opportunity for free-flowing communication, and I think people like it too. They want to know exactly what they're signing up for.
Just a unique and amazing service, and we appreciate you coming out and explaining all of this to us, and we welcome you anytime on our show to be giving us more great information. So we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us here.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.